Okay. This is a report. Normally the data that we bring to meetings like AMPAC or SMRT is just raw data. So since I started attending these meetings, I've asked our detective, Michelle Michaels, the bias crimes detective, to actually send me a report each month that details not just the case number and what the report was, but kind of some of the action that she did. There's 20 copies.
Okay.
So somebody has, somewhere there's some extra
Come
copies.
over here.
Okay. So this is the format. If you want it changed, we could change it. On the back, you'll see a year-to-date. And I don't know if you think the numbers are high or low, but this is an average. I looked over last year's numbers, and this is pretty consistent with what we had last year at the end of February. What I'm having Detective Michaels do, each incident that comes into the police bureau is coded, and we'll have the date, the case number, and then just a little summary. And where you see VCR filed, that means bias crime report was actually filed. So that would be classified under the Uniform Crime Report as a bias crime. And you'll see there are several of these here that aren't. I'm pretty familiar with most of these cases from February. And unfortunately, we didn't have the March statistics ready for you yet. The meeting just fell too close to the end of the month to get that. So I know we're kind of short on time. They're all pretty self-explanatory. If you do have any specific questions about specific cases, or if things come up with constituents where they haven't reported to the police and they would like to, they can call the Portland Police Detective Division and ask directly for Detective Michelle Michaels, or any police officer can take an initial police report, and those get down to her. She processes all of the bias crimes for the city of Portland. So.
Can I ask a general question?
Sure.
Do you know the Bureau of Justice Statistics data? Does that include, do they do a category, it's national data that's gathered, it's random sampling instead of reported. Do they track bias?
FBI?
Bias? It's not FBI, it's a random survey that's done by the Bureau of Justice Statistics of American households. And so it's helpful to kind of compare that data against the Uniform Crime Report data just to see, because this UCR data is, like, obviously depends on somebody reporting a crime.
Right.
Do you know if the...
I don't, and I would imagine if it's a random sample, it would be completely different from what the UCR data is. And just like the report that Maria Lisa passed out, most people, if they're complaining about housing discrimination or some of these other things, probably wouldn't call the police. So that wouldn't show up on our data, even though it could clearly be bias related. It would have to be a criminal act in order to fall in the report that I give you each month,
Yeah.
as opposed to a violation of a statute that doesn't involve criminal activity. So I can check on that, though.
I'm curious, I
reviewing
can
their
check too.
information all the time and get email alerts on a variety of things. So.
Yeah. Okay.
But I would guess not. So, and one of the things that I did want to share with you that I've shared with AMPAC and SMRT and some of the other meetings that we go to, oftentimes members of a protected class are the victim of a crime, and once the detective actually gets involved and starts doing interviews, you find out that yes, they were a victim of a crime, but it was not because they're a member of a protected class. So, and then there are other times where on the surface, such as racial slurs, may look like it's has something to do with a bias crime, but then when you actually start interviewing people and digging down into it, you realize that I think there's one case on here where she did not file a bias crime report where racial slurs were used. So it does take some investigation over just the initial call that comes in. So if there's any questions about this before we move on. Sure.
Yes, it's just perhaps semantics. You use terms, and the report terms, certain terms are used repetitively. Unfounded, on very flat. Are those technical terms, is that police jargon, or they are
Yes.
literally meant?
They're police jargon, and we can clear that up a little bit. Unfounded, I can actually have her change the language to make it a little more clear to people who aren't looking at this, but that's more the Uniform Crime Report type language.
Yeah, well, actually, you know, I'm not calling for any further change to the document, but if you could probably take a minute to explain what that means.
Sure.
Well, in the case of the red swastika, does that mean it wasn't there when you went out to look for it? Or?
No, the actual rock was there, and it was taken, but there's a rock sitting in a yard with a swastika on it.
No one knows.
No one knows how it got there. There's no, it's not a crime. I mean, it's not a crime for someone to paint, no. Rocks are very difficult to fingerprint because they're so rough. There's no evidence that that is a crime, the fact that there's a rock sitting there. So it becomes unfounded. Now, if there's a subsequent act at this individual's house, then we can go back, because all of this is coded, and maybe change that designation. But that's how it becomes unfounded as to a crime. Was a crime committed? Well, no, really, there's a rock with a swastika there. Is that or is that not a crime? And it doesn't rise to the level of violating the criminal law. So that's where the unfounded.
Assuming, of course, that the rock didn't get there by itself, but someone actually placed it. If someone had placed it there, would that constitute a crime?
Only if they placed it there because they knew that there was a Jewish person living there, and they did it to, you know, the elements of the crime have to be there. So that's the restrictions that we work under.
Yeah, and that is why I think that for those of us who do not understand the language that you're familiar with, that maybe, just maybe, if there's a way of sort of interpreting that or clarifying that for us.
Sure.
Because I can interpret it in so many different ways, and obviously I would be mistaken. That's why I really appreciate you doing what you need to do.
Yes, and either myself or someone else from the detective division should be here at every single meeting if there are questions too. But I'll try to have her. Originally, I wanted her to keep it to 1 page, and we weren't really successful. And 2-page copying was just a nightmare for me. Anyway, hopefully some of the months it might be smaller, some of the months might be bigger. But I'll try to have her provide a little bit more detail in there.
Thank you.
Pardon me, Commander. There is a question.
Yes. Item 1 and item 2 seem very similar in the action. That is, on item 1, a swastika is painted on a rock, left somewhere, nobody knows who did it. In item 2, a noose is left on a porch, left somewhere, nobody knows who did it. Why is one unfounded and the other BCR filed?
Well, the rock was in a yard away from the house. The noose actually had been tied to, I believe, the door handle of the person's house. So somebody had to intentionally tie that to the door handle of the house, as opposed to somewhere out in your yard there's a rock. And I don't know the specifics about when they interviewed the people either, but you know, that's
Sounds like a matter of degree rather than kind. It sounds like a matter of degree. If it's in the yard, it's ambiguous. If it's on the porch, it's clearer.
Well, it's clearer when they tie it to your door handle,
okay,
that it was directed at you, than if
so
it just
the
happened
first thing
to
it could have
find
been
a,
directed at anyone or undirected.
or undirected,
Okay.
just, you know.
Okay.
So.
Well, for example, there for a while there, and there was this, they were a group, but not really a group. One guy was putting like things that he printed off the internet from the National Socialist Party and sticking them in baggies with rocks, and they were throwing them onto people's yards. And that is not a crime. That would have been unfounded because these were randomly thrown onto everybody's yard in the neighborhood, instead of thrown onto my yard with an anti-Jewish
Right.
diatribe.
There has to be a little bit of intent there, and if they went down the street and put them on 50 yards, it would be unfounded. If they put them on 1 yard and it looked like it was directed at you, like the noose on the doorknob, that's not a random act. That didn't just happen to get on the doorknob. Whereas a rock, top of the arc could.
Okay, now there's something you just said that really resonating somewhere in the back of my thinking. Okay, you talk about intent, but what if the issue is not intent but impact? And how is that going to reflect on police officers when the public who is not able to understand the jargon, says unfounded, inadequate, and so on and so forth? You know what I'm trying to get at? Here we have a fantastic opportunity to work with your department, we work with you in clarifying all sorts of mythology and misunderstanding about the department and about the public and so on and so forth. But at the same time, we need. I feel the need to say this, that we have got to be very, very clear, because one of the things that have been, one of the voices that has been missing and has not been heard clearly is not that of the intent and or the legality of the behavior of the action, but rather the impact that that has had on the community at large. And you put that in some sort of historical context is another reminder of something else, whether it's real or not. It actually fuels that stuff. It what makes my children fearful of going outside because of this sort of stuff. So you see the point that I'm trying to make here.
Right? And hopefully, with the years of training that we've had and continue to provide to officers, there's a sensitivity to that. There's also specific reporting requirements that the federal government gives us to actually determine a biased crime. So anything on here has been investigated by a police officer. Police officers have talked to the victims, whether they truly are the victim of a crime or it's just a perception of victimization. And then a detective and a supervisor have reviewed the cases. So it doesn't go unheard, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But in the raw data as to what really rises to the level of what is a bias crime, that's when it's kind of out of our control.
And I certainly understand that, and I don't want to imply or suggest anything. In fact, I guess what I'm asking you to do is to clarify things for me, because I, as a member of my community, I deal with the impact, whether intentional or not, whether lawful or unlawful. So you help me understand so that I can explain in terms comprehensively to my community. That's what I'm saying. So I really, really appreciate what you're doing. So there's no subtext here at all, okay?
Actually, can I just comment on that? Which is, the police aren't always able to deal with what you were just talking about, but this commission, that's what we can do.
Yes.
That's a job we can do. When communities have impact, and communities are impacted when somebody goes around and throws baggies with nasty stuff in it on everybody's yard. That bothers people. And that's something we can respond to. Whereas the police are limited to how they can respond, because that's free speech. And even though it's hateful and awful, they can't do anything more about it, but we can. And that's kind of cool that we have the opportunity to do something.
And one thing I would suggest is, I think it's the both party intersecting point. I think the police bureau will be working in partnership, but I think police bureau, it needs to confirm to the person who happened to be Jewish that this rock happened to land in their yard, that we are taking it seriously. As a crime or not, we are taking it seriously. And also knock on the door of the person who happens to be black and let them know as well, we are taking it seriously, even if it's not in your yard. So people in the community knows the police are taking it seriously. Even the perpetrator or criminal knows we are taking it seriously. And in our part, I agree with you, we need to also to be proactive about also going. What happens, we come to agreement that whenever you hear something like that, we'll tag with you and they'll knock also with you at the door and communicate. How we want to do it, maybe this is a discussion in the future, we'll discuss it. But I think that's what approach instead of, I know you're not doing this probably, is like instead of the police just coming to instigate fingerprinting and leave, instead of like communicating with the residents in the community who will be afraid because, and they will feel like, oh, the police just showed up and left. If it was like somebody else or another, or they would have given it more attention. So we train all of us in partnership to eliminate that. So I think that's what we probably should be looking at. Thank you.
I'd like to jump in a little bit. I am not a fan of labeling things as bias crimes or hate crimes, in part because of my background of working with survivors and trying to establish any kind of hierarchy of victimization. I think it's, like, I really appreciate what you say, Emily, and I also think that it's this commission, we have the opportunity to really shift our focus onto people who have experienced harm, because the way that our systems currently exist, we have a disproportionate focus on the people who perpetrate harm. And we need to have systems that are in place to help hold people accountable, but unfortunately those systems are really focused on punishment right now, with accountability kind of being in there, but more of a focus on prosecution and incarceration as the way to address harm in the community. And survivors of many forms of violence end up being kind of ancillary to that process. So I think that this commission could have a really beautiful shift in focus in terms of violence, and we can indicate violence in specific realms that we want to address, but having the focus be on the experience of the people who are being harmed and who are coming forward and saying this is affecting us, and having that being our focus. And that's certainly working with law enforcement as one aspect of a healing process, you know, just to know that there are people who are trying to hold accountable the people who have caused the harm, but that our primary focus be on the impact of the decisions of the perpetrators on the community, on the individuals that were harmed.
I think that would be a wonderful focus. I also wanted to extend a comment about the Oregon Crime Victims' Rights Commission and that the Attorney General's office has, and I've done a lot of work with them, and they would be very beneficial partners for this group. And the police bureau provides information to every crime victim every time, as does every police officer in the state is required. And those are very detailed rights that victims have, regardless of what category the victimization is. But I think that might be a great resource for the Human Rights Commission to partner with.
Yes, you're also talking about some impact at the community level, not just with the individual, and that's part of what I heard. Do I know your name? Jorge, that's what I heard. Jorge, something implied in what Jorge said. The whole idea of a random act of violence is, to use lawyer words, has a chilling effect on the people around it. And there then becomes a tension created that plays into the bias, the overall biases that we kind of hold against the other group, and the fear is what motivates that. And so we, the commission, also can do things not just for the individual who is the recipient of the attack, but for the community at large. And part of it is explaining how those random acts affect people. They are not just one person here, but that rock with a swastika on it affects me. I have a response to it. I'm afraid of it. And it makes me go like this, who's around me? You know, so.
And the two people probably trained speaking Arabic too. What's their life experience going forward? How it could change?
Yeah, talk to me later on and I'll tell you. Okay, no more questions. Thank you so much, Commander. I appreciate your time and this report. Really good. And please thank for us, Michelle, as well, for this together. Marisa, you have...
I just have one more thing. I would like to have a further discussion at a different meeting how to approach, so we can dedicate maybe a half hour to this issue. And then I had a reminder to myself, opportunities for strategic impact. There are stimulus dollars coming to our community from the federal government. There's an opportunity for the Human Rights Commission to state or articulate a statement about how those dollars are used and whether they will be used for communities that haven't had the opportunity or often are neglected in terms of that opportunity, because as the economic crisis moves forward, different communities are impacted differently. And so if you would like to make a statement a couple of us could meet and draft a letter, draft a statement to the governor and to the mayor about how to be mindful as those economic stimulus dollars are allotted and distributed to organizations, to contractors, to communities. Yeah. And if you are interested, and I can email this as a reminder, then please respond, and we can draft something for the commission. That's it, because I know you all have prepared.
Thank you. We move to committee's updates, and we start with the
Okay. We need to make these meetings 4 hours.
I agree with you.
I don't think so, unless we can have like one of those.
Dinner, sit down.
Yeah, those sit down dinners.
Yes, many gifts.
With entertainment.
Which is against the law, so.
And $50 per person. That's
Yeah, you know, with this public hope, this whole public thing, we have to like, none of these jokes, we can't do that.
Edit those out.
So are we okay?
Yes.
Okay, Human Rights Commission, Community and Police Relations Committee. I'd like to start my little report by suggesting, no, not by stating that this committee is in process. Is in process. We don't even have the full membership of this committee yet. Yet, something that plagues the Human Rights Commission as well as plagues us is the incredible search for some place that will respond to the need of the community. And so before we even have a chance to determine who we're going to be, we're finding that we're being almost forced to act without really knowing quite sure how that's supposed to fit our mandate. So I'm a little reluctant to address some of the things that you were talking about earlier, Maria Lisa, because that could inundate us. We could get so busy responding to individual despair, which it should be done. Our committee is trying to determine how best to approach the arena of police and community relations. There's history there, and we want to acknowledge that history. We've talked about forgiveness with the chief, that any one of us who have done harm to the other at some point must level a plea of forgiveness to those that we have harmed. Because Bishop Tutu, who I hope all of you will go see in a month, this is what he says about reconciliation. True reconciliation is never cheap, for it is based on forgiveness, which is costly. Forgiveness in turn depends on repentance. And I hope those people who are secularists understand that repentance has a very good secular process, which has to be based on an acknowledgement of what was done wrong, and therefore on disclosure of the truth. You can forgive what you do not know. End of quote. So, saying that, we're in process, we're gathering information, we're learning, we're listening, we're hearing, and we're trying to determine focus. But we can't ever act as a subcommittee of this group thinking that the, 4 of us, commissioners, are the committee, because there are going to be 11 members of this group. We just got on board the police representation. And we're looking now for how many? 4 community members? 4 community members. Then we'll have the full component. Then we'll be able to really launch out and determine our best understanding of how to approach this incredibly marvelous issue of how in the world community and police find a way to relate, to live with one another. Okay, that having said, these are the 4 things that we worked on at our last meeting. We finalized the application form and recruitment, and that's been sent out. You all have seen copies of that, so enough said about that. we heard a report from, help me, CRC, what do they stand for? Community Relations.
Citizen Review Committee.
Oh, right. You think I didn't know what that is.
Independent Police Review Board.
Right. Who came to us to share a study that they'd done on disparate treatment complaints. And we discovered that there was a lot of parallels with that and the police department, the Bureau's response to racial profiling. It was a very good discussion, and it was good that they came to share their information with us. And we agreed that we're going to try to find a way to connect the streams that are working both from the Citizens Review Committee and from the Police Bureau. We also talked a little bit about our involvement in the racial profiling and input sessions that the chief is hosting. Tomorrow is the first one. We agreed as a commission, as a commission or committee? As a committee, yeah. Okay. To assist those sessions by being facilitators at those meetings, to help the community respond to the police bureau's plan. So we start that tomorrow at 5 o'clock, and I think there's another one coming up shortly. So that's what we did with that. We spent good time talking about gang violence and pretext stops, and it was very helpful to have the police presence at the committee, because they were able to give us a very good view and perspective on how police use pretext stops. And we shared very openly and very honestly that this is an issue that's really, really critical to the community at this point, because of unnecessary stops, because of the risks to young people that might get caught up in that, as we try to find ways to deal with gang violence, which is starting to resurface again. That elicited a whole lot of public comment, which was very good to hear what you said, that we can kick some people out of our meetings if they get nasty with us. I just had a question, who's going to kick them out? Some of these people are bigger than I am, so not that size has anything to do with it.
Well, if they're asked to leave and they don't leave, then you can get them for trespassing.
Well, wouldn't that be a good, how do you do?
Yeah, that would be all over the
Yeah,
country.
right.
This committee was a public meeting?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yes, it is a public meeting. The discussion was really, really good on pretext stops. We agreed that it's not something we can just, solve in one session, but we're trying to discover how best to continue this dialogue with the police bureau, with community. And it was also very clear that there are a lot of voices in community that need to be heard. A lot of voices. And sometimes from my community, and I'll let you guess which one that is, there seems to be 2 or 3 people who do all the talking. Well, we will listen to them, but we also want to seek other voices. Because there's a lot of folk who never get asked, and who have great, great thoughts and reflections about the issues that confront us. So we're going to be very aggressive in trying to what do you call that when you go looking for people?
Outreach.
Outreach, thank you. Outreach people. It's no entertainment, I can't make you laugh, stop it. You're not going to get me kicked off of this committee. Anyway. That's what.
We have our lawyer here. So.
Yeah, right. So that's basically what we did, and we're just waiting to get our full membership so we can take off.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
Yes.
What's the process, so it's for the record today, what's the process for outreach to community members to get these 4 members and then how they're picked?
Maria Lisa can help us there.
I can help answer that. So the notice has been posted. We're relying really on all of the commission to be able to forward these, and also the advisors, and personal outreach. My personal interest is in bringing folks on who can actually assist us in moving the work forward. And we are needing specifically representation from the African American on that committee. We have a very diverse committee, and we need representation from African American community that can be opinion leaders, that can help shift the dynamic that is historic with police.
Did the request for those applications go into minority papers as well? I mean, were they distributed to?
I don't know that that's the best vehicle, Tricia. I really think it is about reaching out to the people that we know have been involved in this issue for a number of years and asking them to make a time commitment.
I guess my sense is that by using those publications as well, though, it's kind of like why you go to a lot of work to publicize your public meetings. It's to let people know that you're doing that work. It's not just, you know.
No, they weren't posted in the papers, but there's only 4 positions.
I know.
So I personally want us to be very intentional about who we recruit. And granted that it is an open process, we need folks who can work with us to move the agenda forward.
I'd like to have it be an extremely open process for who you recruit, and then you go through the qualifications with criteria for what the best person would be to serve. But I mean, I found out about the HRC recruitment through Street Roots. You know, so if there's nothing in those kind of publications.
Yeah, at this point, did I send out a media release? I can't remember. I can do that. I can send out a media release. And I do know that the Mercury has the application. They've been tracking this issue for a couple of years. The scanner, I'm sorry, not the scanner, the Portland Observer, I will be meeting with tomorrow. And so they will also have the application and will understand the context of the committee. But no other paper has received it. So I will send out a media release. I'm not sure about advertising, but rather putting the release in.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. What's the timeline?
It is April 10th that we close the...
Have you received any responses?
No, but it was the same with the Human Rights Commission. 2 days before we were flooded with 50 requests. And there's been a lot of interest. Oh, I have someone that I can forward.
Yeah,
But the application hasn't received.
I received calls and emails asking more questions.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully they come in.
From Oregon Action and
And what's the selection process?
No, I don't.
Yeah, the process is we will, the members of the Human Rights Commission, which 4 of us, will review the applications, make the selection, and move forward with our recommendations to the Human Rights Commission as a whole to decide.
You will conduct interviews as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So
that's
the
it.
appointment is by the Human Rights Commission.
One of the things that we discovered from a lot of input that we received is there's some issues about engaging the 2 communities in a common setting for police and community to actually get together and work jointly on an agenda in this arena. There's some real issues with that. You know, some people don't trust one or the other within that setting. And we've made it very clear, first of all, at this gathering, that we are going to find a way to work and engage with one another. And so the subcommittee has also made that commitment that this is about community and police working together, as difficult as that may be. And it will be difficult because we expect full disclosure and response. That's a commitment that we made, and we're going to do that in a way that, and by safety, I don't, psychological safety necessarily, I mean, there will be things that will really, wow, yeah, I didn't realize that about me. That's okay. But that's going to be an issue. That's why we want people who are willing to engage and say, you know what, let's try that. Let's try that.
And just one more question, what's the process for publicizing these meetings that Chief Sizer is setting up and for publicizing your meetings?
Oh, you know, like tomorrow?
Yeah.
Chief Sizer has sent a the Police Bureau has sent a press release. And I have sent the notice through our network, through our advisory board, and also through all of ONI's neighborhood association contacts, and all the community organizations that have been tracking police issues. So my hope is that folks who are really interested and can read the plan ahead of time, because we sent the link for the plan as well, will come to those meetings.
One of the issues when we bring the police and the community together is the issue of power and perceptions of power. And it'd be interesting to see how that gets resolved. When I come in to interact with the police, what I recognize is they have, first of all, guns, whether they have them on them or not. They have the establishment behind them, and that they have the ability to withhold information, the ability to withhold protection, impose that power upon me as an individual. I think that needs to get acknowledged somehow discussed, what it means in terms of the discussion itself. And I don't know that the trust that we would hope to have is going to come easily because of that power imbalance. The police represent the establishment, the government, who tells them, you go police these people over here. You go make these people behave over here. And so when people feel like the police are misbehaving and they want to have that dialogue, I'm not sure where they find their power to have that dialogue, to influence the outcome of that dialogue. And I think it's an important thing to think about and perhaps discuss with the two entities.
That's a very powerful suggestion. Thank you. And I think we've seen that already. But this committee is pretty powerful. You know, and I hope not to intimidate the police too much.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you. We will talk about that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well, we just met again this morning, and I started the meeting by saying that I felt like I had clarity about where we were and where our process was, but I have even more clarity now after the meeting. I'll go ahead and hand out the handouts. These are two, basically the same information that's presented in different forms for different ways that people absorb information. Unfortunately, it's both written, but it's basically a timeline. I'll hand those out for the process, as well as some further kind of teasing out about what will happen. I'll back up a little bit. What you're seeing, though, is a timeline that would allow for great flexibility in the model that we end up choosing for these dialogues. Having said that, it seems like the consensus in the committee is moving towards us having more living room conversation or small group dialogues as the primary vehicle in which we discuss the harm that we decide to address. And that we also have the opportunity for people to gather in large groups after they've had living room conversations to be able to be in community with other people who have participated in the living room conversations. Thank you, Kofi. Essentially, we're trying to provide the opportunity for both individual transformation and processing around harm, as well as community transformation and processing around harm. There's no magic wand that allows for any individual to be healed after they have been harmed, but the best we can do is try to create containers that hold the totality of human experience, and then trust that when we're in a space that we feel safe and we're able to connect with either the pain or the frustration or the joy that we want to be able to share in those settings, that we will be transformed and that the people we are connected with will be transformed as well. The type of harm that we are generally trending toward addressing would be that of race and racism and race relations. what I was really excited about this morning in our conversation is that we weren't necessarily talking about, we were talking about a number of different, race is so complex, we were talking about a number of different situations that we can imagine dialogue happening. Dialogue between folks from what's traditionally called brown-black dialogue, folks from the African American community and either Latino communities, or generally Latino communities, dialogue between white folks and any number of communities. We're trying to be able to give people the space to delve further into their experiences, as well as, well, I think Donita really shared it best, like being able to understand what the experiences of others are. That, you know, we might be pretty grounded in our own experiences. You know, for me as a person with a disability, I feel pretty grounded in what my experience is, but I have a whole lot to learn about what the experiences of other people are based in their racial background. So we want to try and provide the best container for that possible. The bulk of the, well, I don't know about the bulk, but what I tried to do with the circle diagram, I'll refer to that first, is inside the circle are the processes that are internal, and outside the circle is what will be more apparent in the community. And so the place where I was going to go next was the bulk of the capacity building for this dialogue project will be in the facilitators that we train. We're hoping to use a peer facilitation model, so it will be critical for us to recruit people and to train people who are from the communities that we hope to engage in dialogue around issues of race. And that we view that not only as individual transformation for the people that are engaging as facilitators, but also as leadership development for them as well. We talked about a number of different avenues. You know, Portland State has a conflict resolution program, and there are many people that we know in the community that would probably be interested in engaging as facilitators for this process. So we'd be recruiting people all over, just like we're recruiting people all over for a lot of things for this committee. But yeah, so maybe I'll stop there and invite, if there are things that people want to add that were at the meeting this morning, or questions as well.
Yeah, well, this happens sometimes. But we decided that the initial set of dialogues will be on race, but we will be inviting the people who are to then go out to be facilitators. So these are not going to be just Native American Jewish. That would be an interesting conversation. But these are going to be whoever wants to learn to be a facilitator for future dialogues, but these will be dialogues on race for those people to come and be there and have conversation and learn. Because you may remember a few minutes ago, Maria Lisa reminded us about the RFP that's out there for the person who's going to be hopefully doing more of this work for us. And that person will hopefully be able to move this forward into a bigger realm than we can all do ourselves. And the other thing I wanted to say was, I was given a job at the end of the meeting, which was to contact Jan, which I did. And so that's Jan Elfers of Academical Ministries, who's hosting Bishop Tutu. And all he has committed to do is go to a reception at 5 or whatever time it is, and be at the program at 6:30. That's what they got. So they don't think that they can get us anything special just for us. But all of us are going to be invited to the reception with Bishop Tutu, at which point we can announce whatever it is.
We'll eat standing up.
But actually, that's being hosted by University of Portland. I'm not sure how that works, but anyway, we're going to be invited, so that would be an opportunity for us to.
We're using the little star on the circle as his talk, where we kind of kick off this project. And so, yeah, maybe we could figure something out at the ceremony where we take a picture with him or something, or I don't know, some way of kind of formally give us your blessing.
How in the city council proclamation, mayor proclamation,
Okay.
is really, is
Might
That
really
would be a good.
Might be good for our commission, it could be there.
Right.
Well, I was hoping that all the commissioners
All
will
the
be
commissioners and
invited.
council members.
We would just, Marty Ellie said, we just have to give her the list of people and just put the commissioners on.
That week, we should have a proclamation on Wednesday morning.
And the police chief.
Okay.
Or chief.
We need to put a
He may not be
little,
there.
a little caveat there. Whoever going to be supporting our budgets.
Right, that's true.
No, you can pay for the ticket for $20.
You for sure, you for sure.
Yeah, that's just invited to the reception, we still have to buy our tickets to the talk.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
the
thank you,
request.
thank you.
That's important.
Just to remind ourselves, it's like about 7 minutes to 6 we need to finish, and we didn't take public comment yet, and also we have announcements. Can you take a minute to finish
I think-
something else? Or- And
No, I don't think it's
Very word.
just title, sorry, just title it.
Wish that could be a next one. Great word.
Yeah, can we, yeah.
There, oh, okay.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I think that's, oh,
I had a question. Have the people in this room seen the movies of the Truth and Reconciliation Committees in South Africa?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
few of them.
Some have, some haven't. Yeah.
Right.
Might be a nice thing for us to look at.
Yeah, The Long Night's Journey into Day, I think is
I
one
think
of
that's
them.
Are the other like in internet and or DVDs that we can share?
Both.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. So we'll touch on this again at the next meeting. Hopefully we'll take it further.
Always, it's a process, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. This is wonderful. Next is public comments.
Who
Do you
wants
have
to
any
identify as
comments?
a
See, they don't have a meeting without public comment.
Oh, okay, so no comments? Okay, thank you. Then next, actually, we'll agenda for next meeting.
Or announcements, yeah, we can do the request.
Okay. Email.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So announcements.
So
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. No, the person who was going to come and talk to us about the movie Peepers didn't come, but I think that someone associated with the film left a bunch of envelopes there. So please, on your way out, walk out with one of those, and maybe we can host a viewing of Peepers.
Yeah.
I just want to remind people about the OHOC Seder. I hope you'll come. The deadline to register is tomorrow. So if you want to come, it would be great if you could register tomorrow. I mean, I'm sure I've been bombarding you with emails, and if I haven't, I should have been. So please do come, and here's extras if you want to share these with people. The other thing is, I had hoped to invite all of you to read names and Yom HaShoah, and some of it, Maria Lisa said she didn't get the letter, but anyway, the slots are now full. So we do have a lot of people who have volunteered to participate, and that's on April 21st at Pioneer Courthouse Square, and we have a great representation of elected officials and people from every walk of life and community who are coming. Yeah, if you have a friend who's reading, I could hook you up and we take half their time. So anyway, I have our names here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'll be reading. If somebody really wants to, I'd be happy to share my time.
Yeah. Thank you, Aggie. That's actually, I get the mail from you. I really appreciate it. You must be in the group. Yeah, so thank you.
Can you announce the coaching?
Oh, yeah, that too, thanks. I'm a member of the Steering Committee for the Coalition Against Hate Crimes, which is another group that Dr. Michaels comes to, and this is way fancier than anything we ever get from her, so this you all should be appreciative.
You probably start getting a variation.
That's great. But the Coalition Against Hate Crimes is going to switch our location for our meetings to this office, and we're really excited about that. And the group meets on the fourth Thursday of the month, except for Thanksgiving, we don't meet. But they're going to start this coming month, which I think is the 23rd. And we're hoping to have Attorney General John Kroger as our speaker because he's very interested in coming around and talking. They're trying to start a civil rights division of the state of Oregon, and this is his office that's wanting to do this. And I think they would enjoy having the Human Rights Commission input as well. So if all of you, when the time comes for the meeting, I'll send out an announcement. I send out the announcement. Please don't delete every time you see my name. It's just the way it is. But I send out the announcements for the Coalition Against Hate Crimes meetings, and I'll send out an announcement to all of you to attend that meeting if you want to meet with Attorney General Kroger. And so nice of the Human Relations Bureau to host the Coalition Against Hate Crimes. And we're really proud.
Okay, I have one announcement. Last Saturday, I went to this event where it was the launching of a website trying to memorize it, but I apologize, I can email it to you, the link, which is a partnership between the city of Gresham and this lady who took the lead on it from Job Corps, that's how it started, and linked to city of Portland. And police department, I guess, maybe somehow they're involved in it, they're going to be involved in it, is this booklet that they develop for people who are homeless. That normally, like when somebody homeless, you tell them move from the street, or they want to know certain things, they don't know. And this is a little, like a book, little book this size, and English and Spanish, and it has all the resources in the community that exist for people who are in poverty or homeless, including employment, training, multiple things where to get.
I think you have some.
Oh, the green. Oh, you have them here. Oh, okay. Okay. So that's actually a good resource for us in human rights all to know about those resources. So I have been going through this booklet. But I also recommend police departments that, in my opinion, those can be reused to be carried in vehicles. So if somebody homeless that's been in an area where they shouldn't, maybe that would be helpful to hand out to them and give it to them. So I think it's a really great resource. And they upload this lady from Job Corps and also City of Portland, City of Gresham for doing this for, sorry, not feeling well, for our community. So I just want to announce that, and we'll get from here as well. Any other announcements?
The bus tour.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I sent out an email today.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
The bus tour that we were scheduling for April 10th, the folks who were going to actually staff the tour can't make it anymore. So now we have to start again with other dates in May or June. So I will be polling you again, or Kofi will be polling you again when we get those dates from the Fair Housing Council.
It's just as well because we're going to have a meeting there, wouldn't we, on the bus?
Yeah, we were.
I was going to say, that means we can all go to Friday services and not worry about it.
We'll see you there.
Yeah, right. I don't know what time, but yeah. So.
Any other announcements? If no announcements, Commander Tracy and Commissioner Chris, thank you a lot for your commitment and so for coming. Meeting adjourned. Have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.